Hello and welcome back to another video from the Mike Live in 5 channel after an extremely frustrating afternoon at the G-Tech yesterday. I'm recording this on Monday morning and it's going to be a similar video to what I did after the Liverpool game. Some raw reaction, some tweets that I've collated, some stats that I've collated. It's not going to be the detailed analysis, but I got some good feedback on the last video. So this is what we're going to do in today's one. Immediate reaction to the result, I think it was really poor from kind of start to finish. Maybe not start to finish because I actually do think we were quite good in the first half. And if they didn't get their goal, you know, maybe it's a different game. And if a couple of chances go our way and we win those kind of 50-50 chances in the box, then maybe it's a different story. And maybe I'm, you know, recording this video on the back of a win. But it was just so frustrating to see another team come to the G-Tech and just really frustrate us. I think it gave very strong shades of when we played Forest, very strong shades of when we played Arsenal in terms of, you know, the opposition teams getting those goals and sitting back and us really struggling to break down that kind of low block / mid block. I mean, there's been so much narrative about Spurs this season. We knew their injury record coming into the game. We knew their form. They just lost to Leicester. They'd lost to Everton in recent weeks, like relegation form. And genuinely, I said on the last episode of the podcast, I said after the Palace win, I was thinking, you know, is it a case of how many against Spurs? Like, it was really not something that I got right at all. I really thought that we'd roll them over, especially with no Van der Ven in. I know we started in the Europa League. He just makes them so much better. But I really thought against a second string Spurs side, I thought it would be an opportunity to get back on song at home, and I was just completely wrong. I think there was a clear game plan from Spurs and it was to get a scrappy goal and sit back on the lead and defend. And they defended really well, better than I've seen Spurs defend in recent weeks. I'm not going to put it all down to Brentford being really bad because I think Spurs were, you know, defensively resolute. And that's not something that they've been renowned for this season. But it was just so frustrating. And I think in this video, what I'm going to talk about is Brentford's lack of a plan B this season. I think it was a game that kind of highlighted the absence of Igor Thiago and having that outlet up top, having something a little bit different, having someone that can get on the end of the crosses that we pumped into their box relentlessly during that game. I'm going to have a little chat about set pieces because there was a few comments on my last video and a few comments on the podcast as well about our lack of threat from set pieces this season. I've got some numbers on those, so we're going to talk about that. And then lastly, I want to talk about substitutions because yesterday, I think everyone watching the game was crying out for subs to be made so much earlier than they were. There were 3 made in total, but the first came on 65 or 66 minutes. Jensen came on for Vitali, but I think after that kind of 10-minute spell in the first half when we had a couple of chances, I think Match of the Day highlights kind of typified it perfectly. We went from a chance on 53 and then the next highlight of the game was on 86 or 83 or something like that. So there was a good sort of 20-minute, half an hour spell in that game where we created nothing, really. And I've got some numbers around points from winning positions dropped, points from losing positions gained. We're going to have a look at those and sort of talk about maybe a criticism that you can level at Thomas Frank and that his game management at times isn't like up there with the kind of elite managers in the league and maybe something that could potentially set him apart from those managers. But just before I get going, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, drop a like on the video, drop a comment on the video, and yeah, let's just get straight into the video. So this is what I'm going to start with, an article on Sky Sports News. This was kind of their full-time wrap, and I just want to read out this segment here. Brentford's fortune has been conquered more than usual in recent weeks. They are now winless in 6 at home across all competitions, which is a weird thing to say given how strong we've been at home basically all season. And Thomas Frank will be reflecting on how his side failed to make long spells in Spurs' final third. Count 37 crosses, 48 touches in the box, and a 2.29 XG added up to nothing. Brentford had 20 shots and 2.29 XG against Tottenham today, both of which are the highest totals in a Premier League game where they failed to score. And before I kind of want to talk about the crosses and our strategy in this game and the lack of threat on Tottenham's goals, particularly in that second half, I think it would be useful to kind of outline Brentford's approach this season and something that I've talked about on this channel, something that we've talked about on the podcast in terms of Thomas Frank this season, new playing style. We're playing out from the back. We're enjoying a little bit more possession in all the games that we play. But the main focus is on crosses, getting the ball in central areas and increasing the quality of our chances. And the thing is, I think that's great. When it works, I think it's brilliant. When we've got the personnel to do so, it's brilliant. And it has been a feature of our game. I think in terms of the quality of chances, I don't think there's a team in the Premier League who have a better conversion rate in that. We get really high quality chances and we normally put them away. And I've stressed normally there because, yesterday, wasn't a good day in front of goal, especially for the likes of Johan Wissa, Brian Mbeumo, Kevin Schade. I don't want to talk about those three in too much detail because we're going to do that on the podcast. But I want to highlight this tweet with regards to the crosses. Gaff, Super Bees, regular feature on this channel, regular feature on the podcast. I can't help but feel if the big man Igor Thiago started against Spurs today, he would have made the difference. The crosses were on a plate and we'd missed so many chances. He would have had the Tottenham centre-back pairing on toast. Love Wissa aerially. He doesn't exist. And if we look back to the game where Thiago was at his best, and it's the only game that we've really seen him, to say at his best is even like a weird thing to say because we've really not seen enough of him to kind of quantify what his best is. But against Newcastle, he had Fabian Schär and Dan Burn locked down, two very physical centre-halves. Newcastle known to be a very physical side in the Premier League. And against Archie Gray and Ben Davies yesterday, Wissa really just, he didn't have, counter-pressing wise, off the ball, I thought his running was really good. And his ability to win the ball back and kind of drop deep, and some of the things that I've spoken about in videos gone by, I thought he was really good at. But in terms of just applying that finishing touch, in terms of really rattling an 18-year-old centre-back in Archie Gray, Igor Thiago would have done that. And, we don't have a timeline on the injury, the joint infection. I've heard a GPG thread saying that he could be out until October, November. I'm not sure how much truth that is, or if they meant October, November last year as opposed to this year. But Thiago, I think, would have made a big difference yesterday. And all those crosses into the box, we might have seen something from them. It was a game, and it was something that I think we've missed this season against the top six, in that having Tony and having, that presence up top is so useful to breaking teams down and to getting us up the pitch a little bit more. Having a little bit of, having someone sort of in the box that can occupy centre halves, having someone that allows Johan Wissa and Brian Mbeumo and Kevin Schade, all of these flair players that we've got who are better with space to run into. I can't help but think that if we'd have had a different kind of presence up top yesterday, it really would have helped that kind of threat in terms of converting all those touches in Spurs' penalty area into tangible, clear-cut chances. Because we had a lot of XG, but I don't really think, bar maybe Wissa's chance in the second half, there was one clear-cut opportunity that you have to say, right, you need to be scoring. And if we have like a Thiago in there who could rattle defenders, who can really just rattle defenders and prevent centre-halves from just clearing the ball at every opportunity and making those crosses easier to get on the end of, I think it would have been a different story. But I think in terms of the other things that I want to talk about in this video, and something else that kind of ties in with the Thiago chat, is Brentford's set-piece threat this season. I think the set-pieces this season have been an area where Brentford have really not looked great. That drop-off from Bernardo Cueva to Keith Andrews at the start of the season didn't look too steep because we had that amazing run where we were scoring in the first minute of games. That came to an end, and then I think the only other set piece we've scored this season was Ethan Pinnock against Manchester United at Old Trafford. But if you look at the trend, I sent an email out to the guys at StatPerform. In the 2021-22 season, Brentford scored 16 goals from set pieces, 18 in the following season, 11 last season, and 5 so far this season. Yesterday, I think, kind of just laid bare the lack of creativity from these set pieces. I seem to remember, especially in this season when we scored 18 goals, the corner routines, they were so different. Like, you'd get Matthias Jensen hanging the ball up to the back stick. You get Ethan Pinnock there who would head it back into the danger area. The long throws had a little bit more creativity about them. This season and yesterday, Michael Coyote launching the ball into the box, and Kevin Schade, whoever it was launching the ball into the box, it's almost just like we're only looking for that flick on, and then we're hoping for a little bit of chaos in the box. But I feel like we've lost a degree of kind of ingenuity that we had under Bernardo Cueva. And Keith Andrews is probably going to be under a little bit of pressure, I'd imagine. I heard in Thomas Frank's Match of the Day post-match interview that he kind of pointed out the amount of set pieces that we had in this game. We had a lot of corners, a lot of free kicks, a lot of long throws, and ultimately we didn't create anywhere near enough from those set pieces. I think that kind of, if it's not going our way, do we have a plan B? I think it's clear that we have just kind of looked a little bit lost in terms of ideas, which is exactly what I tweeted from the Ealing Road podcast account. Devoid of ideas, subs far too late, poor all over the pitch. When Brian's head goes down, we're basically playing with 10 men. Schade allergic to taking on his man in that second half. I don't know if I'm being harsh with that tweet, but it just did look like that. We didn't really have an answer to Spurs' defending. We just kept launching balls into the box from set pieces, from throw-ins, from whatever you want to do, from crosses as well. And every single time the ball was just getting cleared. So there's probably going to be a little bit of pressure on Keith Andrews, considering how good we've been from set pieces in the Premier League and finding those marginal gains that Brentford always talk about, especially in that season where we almost got Europe, to score 18 goals from set pieces, which I only think was better than Arsenal that season, is really something. And you need those marginal gains if we're going to be pushing up the European places, or if we're going to be pushing up towards the other end of the table. You need to find those gains in the places where you can. And this season, we've just not been able to do that. So Keith Andrews, I think, is going to be under a bit of pressure because it's something that a lot of people have noticed, that from set pieces, we just don't have any threat this season for whatever reason. And I don't even think necessarily it's because the delivery's been too bad. Jensen's not playing, and he is normally the guy that whips in that amazing ball from the corners. So he's not starting, so we kind of lose that delivery. We're not seeing the kind of creative routines that we used to see when Brentford ever got a corner or when Brentford got a free kick. We're not seeing that anymore. So I think from set pieces, we need to kind of rethink our strategy a little bit. And Keith Andrews has got his work cut out in that, you know, like I've just said, if we're going to be pushing up the table, we need to find marginal gains in the places that we can. And this season, we've not been able to do that. Next thing I want to talk about is the subs. And this is a tweet from Ghost of Champ JC. It says, Thomas Frank has no idea what to do tactically when we're losing a game. Change my mind. And the replies to this are mixed. There are some people saying, you know, he kind of just runs out of ideas. I can't remember the last time he made a change that resulted in a win for us. Why Carvalho didn't come on when Coyote did beats me. There are some people saying agree, but also there's no attacking quality on the bench. I think if you look at the bench options we had yesterday, we had Magoma, Yarmo, Fabio, and that was about it really in terms of attacking changes that we could have made. There was a stat at half-time basically that said that Brentford had never gone on to win a game after being 1-0 down or losing the game at half-time. And if you look at the points retrieved from winning positions this season, we've gone down 15 times in games and we've gained 10 points, 3 wins and 1 draw. And if you look at Thomas Frank's record in the Premier League, he's always around this middle mark in terms of points won from losing positions, bar the first season in the Premier League where we were actually near the top. And I think it was only Liverpool that bested us in terms of picking up points from losing positions. As you can see from this table here, we were down 25 times in that first season and we won 15 points from winning positions, which is largely good. I mean, it's much higher than the league average. But there's another thing as well in all of this, and it's 47 points drop from winning position since the start of last season. And what I want to talk about specifically is Thomas Frank's game management. I don't really think that he's up to the level that some other managers in the league are in terms of really changing a game. And I really want to stress that at the moment we're kind of down to the bare bones. We've not got too many options in attacking areas. We've got Thiago out, Nunes out. We've not got a winger on the bench that we can bring on. We've got young players on the bench. The one that really frustrates me, though, is the Fabio Carvalho one. I don't know why he's not getting more minutes. And I think everyone could kind of see that we needed to make a change yesterday. And for whatever reason, they didn't come. But I look at other managers in the league. Andoni Iraola at Bournemouth. He's got an amazing track record of bringing subs on and changing a game. You look at Marco Silva at Fulham. Brought 2 substitutes on against Newcastle at the weekend. Both of them combined to score the winning goal. You look at Arne Slot at Liverpool, you see his game management, bring on Darwin Núñez, change the game. Liverpool win in the last minute against us. And I understand that those teams perhaps have more options off the bench. You can certainly say that for Fulham. You can definitely say that for Liverpool. But Bournemouth, for example, you know, they've got a probably bigger injury crisis than we do at the moment. But Andoni Iraola is still managing to get a tune out of them. And I'm not saying, you know, that I think Thomas Frank is a lesser or a better manager than any of those managers that I've just listed. But what I am saying is that there is a clear... There's clear sentiment from Brentford fans, I think, that Thomas Frank sometimes is too slow to make substitutions or makes the wrong ones. And to only be bringing on Jensen in the 66th minute, to only be bringing on Carvalho in the 84th minute when we're in need of a goal, I just think he's bonkers. And I understand you look at the bench, you know, there's not anyone that screams bring me on here apart from maybe Fabio Carvalho. There's not a lot of attacking substitutions that he could have made. But when it's like that and we don't have a chance for a long period of the game, you have to do something different. You can't just keep lobbing the ball into the box hoping that Wissa's going to get a flick, because it won't happen. And we've seen it a lot of times this season, and we've seen it a lot of times last season. Sometimes the substitutions he gets wrong. For example, Ben Mee bringing him on against Fulham when we were defending really well. it just changed the tide of the game and we were sat too deep in that game. That's a whole nother story. But it's just, I feel like the injuries are hurting us, yes, but Thomas Frank's game management at times could be a little bit better. We need to see like a different approach in terms of, can we bring Carvalho on earlier to try and affect the game? We've got a number 10 there who we've signed for £20 million, who has not had any minutes in the Premier League, any sustained minutes in the Premier League this season. And yes, he wasn't good against Plymouth, but everyone wasn't good against Plymouth. So like, he needs to be coming on the pitch earlier for me. I guess what I'm trying to say is, you look at both of these stats combined, that Brentford have failed to turn a 1-0 deficit at halftime into any points this season. You look at the fact that we're pretty much mid-table in terms of points from losing positions. We've got 10. We've been down in 15 games this season. We've gone on to win 3. We've lost 1. And you also look at the fact that we've dropped 47 points from winning positions since the start of last season. You have to factor in the injuries, you really do. But still, that is a league high. And I think Spurs are the second team in that list, and they're only on 41. But 47 points from winning positions it's not great. When you think of the amount of games that we should have won or we should have got a point from, Fulham, United, Spurs, potentially in the reverse fixture. You look at the Man City game where we played really well and we didn't win. You look at the Forest game away last season when they were down to 10 and we didn't win after scoring first. There's patterns, and I don't want to put it all down to Frank because obviously the injuries have to come into it, but his game management at times needs to be a little bit better. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. But in terms of the numbers, we're pretty much mid-table in that we get some points from losing positions, but we drop a lot of points from winning positions. So that tells me, and I would be intrigued to know what other people think in the comment section, it tells me that Thomas Frank's game management sometimes isn't up to scratch. And I think yesterday typified that because that game was screaming out for subs and no subs were made. Just to kind of talk about some players in particular, Kevin Schade, I don't know what was going on in that second half, but he just looked, every time he got the ball down the left-hand side, he would just turn back, give the easy ball back to KLP, Janelt in midfield, and the ball would eventually end up in the box somewhere, and it just led to the exact same thing. Their defenders clearing it out, and it was just a repeat pattern. And I don't know why that was a kind of directive from Frank, potentially, or just Schade low on confidence, but in the first half, he was getting at Porro, and we had some opportunities in their penalty area. In the second half, nothing, literally nothing. Another thing I tweeted out on the Ealing Road podcast account, Bryan Mbeumo, I think all of the front three had an off day, but Bryan Mbeumo, when his head goes down, he is a different player. So many occasions yesterday when he'd pick up the ball, run at a defender, and it would result in an unsuccessful dribble and we'd surrender possession. So many times where the ball into the box wasn't quite right. And it's that level of consistency. It's the perennial Bryan Mbeumo issue that we've talked about basically since he came to the club, is that inconsistency. And performances against teams that, you know, are bigger than us and have more money than us and deeper squads than us. I'm struggling to kind of think in my mind. I'm thinking maybe Liverpool at home when we almost got Europe in that season, but he doesn't have enough good games against quality opposition for me. And I think that was very apparent yesterday as well. As soon as it looked like Brentford weren't going to score, we may as well have been playing with 10 men with Bryan Mbeumo, because his head goes down. He tries things that he normally wouldn't try. His end product isn't good enough. And I don't want to slate him too much because I think everyone had an off day, but it just goes back to that thing. We need to find something different this season if we're going to be breaking teams down who get goals against us at home and then just sit back in a low block and just wait for us to eventually just pump the ball into the box, which is what we do. It's just definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I feel like yesterday it was that. It genuinely was that. And Bryan Mbeumo, he was doing that as well. He was just running at his man, running into trouble and giving the ball away needlessly. I think the only silver lining is that Michael Coyote came on and looked really good. Christopher Ayer, I thought you could tell that he'd been out for a while. I didn't think he played too brilliantly. And he didn't get on the overlap as much as Mads would. I feel like that was maybe a point where Brian needed some help and maybe why you saw his game fade, particularly in the second half, because he didn't really have that option from Ayer bursting down the right like he normally would do with Mads. But Michael Coyote came on and he looked really positive. He looked like he wanted to really get stuck in. He wanted to tackle. He wanted to bring us up the pitch. He's got a hell of a long throw in him. But like I said, if we don't kind of have a little bit more creativity from set pieces, that's not going to mean much going forward. But he was really positive. Just to kind of finish off, really, really frustrating day at the G-Tech. I really, really wanted us to kick on after Palace. And, you know, I tweeted out after the Newcastle game on the Ealing Road podcast, welcoming the top 6 teams to the G-Tech is going to be a lot of fun this season because we've been really good at home. maybe that's obviously got something to do with the fact that we had Thiago in that game and it was the best we've played all season, because I don't think we've seen that since, really. But since then, we've welcomed Arsenal, Forest, Liverpool, Man City, and now Spurs to the G-Tech, and we've lost all of those games bar one against City where we drew 2-2. So, yeah, I mean, we need Thiago back. I think that's so key to us in terms of if we want to get anything meaningful this season. We need Thiago back. So let's hope that happens. Yeah, really frustrating day. Not really too much else to say on it. But the set pieces need to improve. Thomas Frank's substitutions need to improve. And we need to get Thiago back, because the crosses and the getting balls into central areas, I agree with the game plan. But at the moment, we don't have the personnel to kind of fix it when we're not in the lead or when we're playing against a team who sit in that low block and are happy to defend. And it's the same story that we've seen in the last few weeks with Brentford at home. The link for the podcast will be in the description of this video. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Slightly more downbeat today, but it was just so frustrating to watch that yesterday. Brentford have been a bit of an enigma this season. You can't really predict how we're going to play. It wouldn't surprise me if we go to West Ham and put in a really good shift and come away with the 3 points, but it's going to be really difficult. Hopefully the next time we play one of the top six at home, we've got Thiago back. But yeah, no, really annoying day at the G-Tech. Let me know what you think of the video. Drop a like, drop a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.